Hi, I'm Maya from Book and Dreams, and welcome to my November wrap-up. In November, I participated in this little thing called NaNoReMo. So this was a play on NaNoReMo, thought up by Bethany from Beautifully Bookish Bethany. I will leave the link to her idea video down below. Basically, the goal was for people who are not participating in NaNoReMo because we are not talented writers. The idea was for us to, in some sort of way, participate in this huge global event because we were feeling FOMO. So the idea was to set a number of pages that you want to read. My goal for this project was to read 5,000 pages in the month of November, and I surpassed that. I read 18 books and 7,159 pages. I also participated in two readathons. One was Lovember, created and hosted by Becca from Read Becca, and the other one was the Final Book Support Group Readathon, which is created by Steph from Steph Loves, and the goal of that readathon was to read final books in the series that you have. And the goal of the first readathon was to read romance books. Now, my whole month could be surmised with two authors. I discovered T. Kingfisher and read a bunch of books by her, and I read the whole of the ACOTAR series by Sarah J. Maas. And Lord. Okay, let's just go through the books. So I started my month with reading Sword Heart by T. Kingfisher, then I went on to What Moves the Dead, and then finished it with Nettle and Bone. I do have a video where I talk about all these three books, so I will leave it here for you to check out. Needless to say, they were a really interesting introduction into the author, and after that I read a bunch of more of her books. Because T. Kingfisher writes cozy fantasy. She also writes horror, but I haven't really gotten to that unless you count What Moves the Dead, because that technically is horror, but it has a gothic feel, so it wasn't really all that frightening to me, but whatever. You can check out my thoughts on those three books in the video. Then I heard that she had a fantasy romance series, and of course I had to go read it. So I think the series is called Steal something. Anyway, basically the three books are Paladin's Grace, Paladin's Strength, and Paladin's Hope. So in the world that she created in Sword Heart, there are gods, and different gods have their own paladins that basically, I guess, enforce the will or protect the people and whatnot, depending on what kind of a god it is. So there is is it the god of the dead? Oh my god, I forgot. Anyway, basically he died. Someone killed the god. And because of that, his paladins have become unstable. Usually they go into this berserk state where they basically kill everything around them. So in this series, we follow three different paladins from this god as they are dealing. There is like an overarching mystery that is happening in the first two books and a different one in the third book. In each book, paladins meet their romantic interests. In the first one, that would be Paladin Stephen and Grace. Grace is a perfumer, and together they're trying to figure out who wanted to murder an envoy of a neighboring kingdom, let's just say. So in the second one, we follow Istvan and Clara. So Istvan is sort of on the trail of a supernatural being that we meet, that we sort of see and are introduced to in the first book. He's going around the country trying to find this thing and what created it and who. And on his travel, he meets Clara, who is a nun of a secretive order, for reasons I will not spoil. Because even though a lot of people on Goodreads do, but I'm not, because it's a very, very cool, even on the nose kind of a discovery. And in the third one, we follow Piper, who is lynch doctor. So basically he deals with dead bodies. I mean, he can work on alive people, but he prefers to work with dead bodies. And he is sort of partnered with Galen and a detective. Then they go off outside of their town to work on this very interesting mystery, and they find themselves in a death labyrinth. Yeah, what I love about this series is, first of all, the main characters are older. That is, they're my age, which is really cool. They're in their 30s, and which means that we lose that sort of brashness and insta-loviness in like the relationships. And what I really also enjoy about this relationship that we follow, that each person in this relationship is their own person. Usually when you sort of read romance with younger people, they usually lose themselves in their partners, but this is not the deal here, because in the first one especially, Grace is a perfumer. She has dedicated a lot of her time in learning her craft and being good at what she does. And she immediately, when things are looking up with her and Stephen, she immediately tells him, I can't really dedicate a lot of my time to you because I have this job, I have this thing that I have to do. And Stephen is the same way, because being the paladin of this dead king, he is trying to make sure that his fellow brothers are safe, and that he can help them through all the trauma that they've gone through together, because there's not a lot of them. And so together they do have this understanding, like, yes, we can be together, but, you know, we won't be like this the entire time, you know. The similar situation is between Istvan and Clara. They both have their own things that they're dealing with, but together they are stronger. They can do whatever they want, and it's fantastic. In the third book, we do have a bit of insta-loviness between the two guys, and it was a bit jarring, considering, you know, how the first two books went. So I think the third one was my least favorite, but overall very good, because the mystery of who killed who and what this death labyrinth thing was all about was really, really interesting to read. But yeah, there is some angst, which is always appreciated from my side, but also there's humor, there's wacky characters, there's you know, magical objects and interesting people and people doing crazy stuff, and it's fun. It's just great. So if you're looking for a really cozy fantasy romance, definitely check this series out. So let's just go quickly through the readathons I participated in. So Lovember, as I said before, you're supposed to read romance in November, and for that I decided to reread the ACOTAR series so I can get to the fourth one. So I reread book 1, Courts of Thorns and Roses, then I read book 2, Court of Mist and Fury, then I read book 3, Courts of Wings and Ruin, and then I got to Court of Silver Flames. Now I do have a video where I document my way reading through this, so you can check it out. I'm just going to say, this thing broke me emotionally. I'm still not recovered. It was so good, that the angst, I mean, what I do enjoy about Sarah J. Maas's writing is she can write the fuck out of a character that's going through something, and creating Nesta, like when you start reading from the first book, Nesta is just a horrible person, and she's selfish, she's entitled, she's just spoiled, she's just awful. And you know, to turn that character into whatever is happening in this one, and you can see Cassian and you can see all the stuff that's happening, you know, in the background. Oh my god, it's so good. So definitely, if you can survive the first one, but because this one is bad, very cringy and very just but if you can survive this one, the rest of the series is just absolutely fantastic. It's like, it's great, but you have to read the first one so you can get all the, you know, context of why Rhysand and Feyre are the way they are, and you know what's happening with the kingdom and the plot of the whole series. But yeah, I read them. I had a great time reading them and really enjoyed this readathon, and I'm looking forward to the next iteration in, I guess, next November. Then I did the final book support group readathon. Basically, the goal is to finish series. So I picked 3 books to finish. The first book I've read was Empty Smiles, which is book 4 in Catherine Arden's Small Spaces series. So this is a middle grade a series in which children are being haunted by this incredibly creepy dude called the Smiling Man. And he's an evil force that, you know, basically captures people, turns them into scarecrows, or turns them into dolls, as we can see in the fourth one. And just it's definitely a very creepy middle grade series, and I just kept reading it, and I'm thinking, like, when I read books when I was in elementary school, none of it was as creepy as every middle grade I've read since college. So take that for what it is, but it's very creepy, and it's a fun series to read. I do have just like one gripe. The series overall conflict seemed to be resolved quite quickly, because in the fourth one, I mean, I can't tell you much without spoiling the whole series, but let's just say that there was a mission that the kids had to do to help out a friend, and the way that I got to that was just, I mean, it took a little while. They also told the adults, which was something new, did not help any bit with adults knowing, because they were immediately then just moved out of the picture. But you know, the whole conflict was a bit resolved, and the ending came about quite quickly. And I hate when that happens, when like when there is like a mysterious force, supernatural force, whatever the Smiling Man was, when he was eliminated, it seemed like all the adults just forgot everything that happened in the last like four books, and you know, everything that happened in each of the books was a bit traumatic. So for them to have no memory of that, only the children, that was a bit, I don't like when that happens in books. That's like a trope that I don't really care for, but whatever. I am a big fan of the series, and now I've read everything by Catherine Arden, so awesome. Looking forward to more works from her. Then I finished a paranormal romance series, which is basically a Why Choose series. I mean, I picked it because it was on the list of Why Choose books that I got into after reading The Lady of Rook's Grave Manor. So I read One Apocalypse by Christy Cunnings. That is book 4 in the Dark Side series, in which we follow, in the first book, deals with a ghost girl who wants to be alive because she's haunting these 4 dudes in this house, and you know, she wants to be alive so she can get with them and be part of their lives and whatnot. And as the series progresses, it becomes more and more ridiculous because we find out who the girl is, and we find out who the four guys are and what the relationship is, and it creates this world that lacks depth because we are just pummeled with a bunch of characters that have like episodic roles, and you're just kept wondering like, okay, so is this person going to be important? Why are they here? And they're just there to just mess things up for everybody. And I just could not, in the 4th book, I could not get into anything that the book was selling, basically. And I, by the end, did not care at all what was happening. So that was like, ugh, whatever. Thankfully, I'm finished with the series. Not sure if I'm going to read anything more by the author. Because it just at the end it became too much. So yeah, I finished it, so I can say that. And the last thing I finished for this readathon was this book. Now this is Ancillary Mercy. Oh my god, I never forget it. Never remember how to say this. This is book 3 in the Imperial Raj series. Now, I will say I wasn't as concentrated as I should be while listening to this book. This world is complex, and it is very full of information that I did not understand. The whole setting of the world is kind of weird. First of all, everyone's a she, so everyone's using she pronouns, I think. Yes, there. In the first book, we follow Breck. Breck used to be a ship, like a consciousness of a ship, a giant ship that used to have crew and to spend time caring for the crew, dealing with the crew and whatnot. So the first book starts with Breck not being a ship anymore, but its consciousness being put in a body of ancillary, which is like an android bot thing that goes around the ship and acts as the consciousness of the ship. Let's just say a physical representation of the ship. Each ship has a bunch of ancillaries that go around and help the crew, and after the ship was destroyed, the consciousness went into this one ancillary, and in the first book, the ancillary does something which I could not remember. I was thinking about it after I read it. I don't remember what happened in the first book. I do remember that I was very confused. I do remember liking the second book better because we dealt more with Breck and like a specific action on a specific, it was either a planet or a space station, I don't remember. And I liked that much better because it wasn't as vast and as grand as the first one. And I know you're supposed to like introduce the reader to the world and whatnot. And also in this world, there's like this emperor who divided its consciousness into different humans, creatures, stuff. And now these different human creature stuff things are fighting amongst each other to become the emperor. And the third book basically deals with the culmination of all those plots. And, you are sort of following along as Breck is trying to save this space station from the emperor. And there's also an alien being that came to the station as a representative because, I don't know, they're mysterious, they're dangerous, and basically this translator, envoy person, alien, just wants to learn about humans and drink fish sauce. And it's like supposed to be Jane Austen in space, and I'm not the hugest fan of Jane Austen. There is something in this. I just have to read it again. I'm gonna read the whole series again, I think, next year, just to see if I get it. And if I don't, then I will just, give this to my library so that other people can enjoy this work. But yeah. And now let's go through the books that I've read that had nothing to do with my TBR, first of all. My TBR, I read like half of them. So I'm just going to go through all the books that I had to read that are not connected to the readathons and whatnot. So another book that I read was for the book club that I had with Christina and a bunch of our friends, and we follow prompts from the Read Harder Challenge, and we had to read the book Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. So this is it was like horror something prompt, I don't remember. So this story follows a group of men who are basically being hunted and haunted by the ghost of an elk that they've killed 10 years ago. I was okay with the concept, fine, it's a ghost, it's haunting you. What I didn't like was just this execution of the story. Now, the thing is, I don't read a lot of horror, I don't read a lot of crime stuff, so this was sort of lauded a couple of years ago, it became very popular. As you know, oh my god, it's a horror book, it's so great, whatnot. It wasn't that scary at all. I found the characters to be a bit samey, like the group of men that it was. I remember the first guy who there were some creepy elements. The first third was very interesting when you were figuring out what was happening, and you sort of see how this ghost basically made this dude go crazy, and the things he did to like his wife, dog, everybody, it's just it was really creepy. But after that it just went into chaos because you weren't sure what was happening, you weren't sure who the ghost was killing, who was the ghost, because it could shapeshift. Like you were like very confused. I was very confused. And then the culmination of this story is a game of pickup basketball between the child of one of the men and the ghost, who shapeshifted into, or whatever, turned into another kid or an older person, I don't remember. Anyway, so yeah, I read it, and it wasn't as awesome as I was led to believe by all of BookTube. So I guess not for me. Then I read Under the Whispering Door by T.J. Klune. This is a story, this was such a beautiful story. And for someone like me who doesn't like to think about death, I don't like to think about anything that's happening after we die, and because it's just frightening and just awful, I do not want to think about it. This was so beautiful. If this, what T.J. Klune wrote about, if that what the afterlife is, that would be fantastic, because it's a great story about the afterlife and about learning how to deal with grief and learning how to be a better person, and how the things that you did in your life they don't have to define you if you find a way to be a better person with the help and support of the people around you. So we follow Wallace, who was a really crappy person when he was alive, and when he's dead, he basically ends in like a purgatory situation with Hugo, who is a ferryman. So basically, souls spend time with Hugo before going to the Whispering Door to the afterlife. And it's T.J. Klune. There is a romance here, but it's also profound. I really enjoyed it. I remember I wrote on Goodreads, and I can't believe this is the same person who wrote Lightning Struck Heart, because those two books seem like opposites of what they're trying to do. I really, really did enjoy it. And, you know, if the only thing you've ever read by T.J. Klune was the Cerulean Sea, the House at the Cerulean Sea. By the way, cerulean was a word that was mentioned at least 50 times in this one. So I was like, every time someone said that, I was like, oh, haha. Yeah, so if that's the only thing you read, this is a perfect second book to read, because it's similar in a way and different in others, but really, really an enjoyable read. I also read The Exiled Fleet by J.S. Dubes. Probably mispronounced that one. Oh my god, why do I never check how that author's name is pronounced? I hear it on the audiobook. Whatever. Anyway, I read this. This is book 2 in the Divide. The first one being The Last Watch. So I've read this because I thought that was the end. Because apparently when it was described as The Expanse, I didn't think of that, oh, it might have 9 books in the series, but the second one, the one that I read now, was the last one published, so there's nothing more to read. So I was like, oh, this could be the end. It's not the end. It's okay. So first of all, it's a sci-fi space opera book adventure with exciting stuff and aliens and you know, politics, and apparently there's a heist in this one. It was such a fun continuation from the first one. So basically, in the first book, we follow sort of spoiled princeling dude who gets put into the army by his grandfather, who is evil, because he blew up one of his laboratories and whatnot. So in this army, he is set at the Divide. The Divide is, I guess, the end of space. Something that happens like beyond space where time is different, and you know, time passes more quickly there than the normal space-time, and you know, there's stuff there to explore. So he's there with the dredges of the military, because everyone who's at the divide and on the ship that he finds himself in is like, they're criminals. They're just like people who have to be in the army because of mess ups, or you know, because it's like their last thing that they can do, because everything else in their life is ruined. So he's in this company, and he finds meets one of the commanders, who basically takes him on as, you know, basically she teaches him how to be a soldier, and teaches him how to use, they have like these plates in their body that helps them be like stronger and whatnot, and use, you know, basically teaches him stuff. This is such a fun adventure story, and in the second one, the rebel forces are trying to get back from the divide, because in the first one, the divide started expanding, which is not good. They're trying to get to normal space and to resources, which they are severely lacking, so they can, I guess, rebel more properly against their bosses. And the third one turned into a heist story, which was quite interesting. It was a bit long though, but the book. But overall, I had a great time reading it, and I'm so looking forward to the sequels. Then the last two books I want to talk about are the two books I read in the last 3 days of November. So basically, I found out that one of my favorite sci-fi romance series, the Clickanians, have a 6th book out, and I read it, and that is Resisting Maxu. So basically, this whole plot of this series, a bunch of women get kidnapped from Earth, and they are taken to this planet, where we have different alien races. All of them called Clickanians? No. Well, whatever. The main one is. So in each story, we follow a different pair. There are also fated mates, tropes, and whatnot. And in this one, since this is book 6, a bunch of stuff has happened. But what I can tell you, there is political unrest on the planet, because all the other aliens are like, why are you hiding all these human women? There's not a bunch. There's not like a whole. There's like hundreds of them. There's like maybe 20, right? And everybody wants their chance to have a mate and find their mates, because the planet is sort of slowly dying out because of something that they did, or had a disease, or something happened, I don't remember, that makes them unable to produce more women children. Women children. Girls, you know, to help the species survive. So finding this sort of alien, because humans are alien to them, possibility that, you know, we found out that they can have children in the previous books and whatnot, you know, to help them with the planet. They're all kind of they want to participate. So yeah, that's happening. The pairs are always a bit different, and the situations that surround them are different. Their trauma is different, and what they're sort of fighting against, because being in this society for our male partners, being in this society where they're constantly judged, and they have to participate in, like, it's sort of like Bachelor by the extreme, where they are sort of picked and by the women, but they have to go to husbandry school. They have to you know, do things to make themselves, you know, picked and whatnot. And then there's the emotional trauma of being with whoever picked you for 3 months, and then if you fall in love and then they move on and whatnot. It's a whole thing. But yeah, they're a fun series to read. They're entertaining. What I didn't like was the involvement of so much politics in this one. I read these for the relationships and you know, and the romance, and not the fact that, you know, we're about to have like this very, I guess, political upheaval and stuff that's going to happen in the next one. And I'm like, okay, whatever. But yeah, read it, had fun with the couple. That's what I care about. And the last book I read in the month of November was Ocean's Echo by Everina Maxwell. Now, this book is a companion novel to Winter's Orbit, which came out, I think, last year or the year before that. Now, Winter's Orbit is a fantastic space romance. It's so good. And I went into this one thinking it's also a space romance. It's not. It's a space adventure story with romance in it. And that kind of lessened my enjoyment, because I went into this thinking, oh, this is going to be so good, because the plot, the summary of the plot is very interesting. So basically, we follow two characters. We follow Dan Hallen, who basically, he can read minds, and he is suspiciously conscripted into the army by his aunt to sort of set him straight. and he's put under the care of Surit, who is an architect. So basically, readers can read people's minds. Architects can impose their will on others, like readers, on other readers. And so to create like a perfect, let's say, call them fighting machines, but they're pilots basically. You basically sync an architect and a reader. And when Surit finds out that Den Hallen didn't consent to this procedure, he was like, okay, I'm not doing this. But until then, Surit he's the picture of a perfect soldier. So, but he's very principled. So, you know, what they were doing to Ten went against his principles. So he was like, okay, we're not doing this. But we do have to pretend to be synced. And when you're synced, you're basically connected with your minds. So it's like a soul bond kind of a thing, you know, if you're into the romantic side of this, which I was, until this turned into this political story of, you know, an adventure of them trying to survive different factions of this army trying to kill themselves and take power over this planet and station and whatnot. Anyway, there's also alien artifacts that give you powers and experimentation, and so much stuff's happening. And I went into this with a wrong concept of what this book was going to be, so I didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I would. But for the romance people who, I can tell you there's pining, there's open communication, which I do enjoy. But, you know, overall, the world building is very interesting. But, you know, I was there for wrong reasons. So this book did not have a great impact on me as the first one. So, you know, take that from what you will. And that's it. Hopefully this video will not be too long. We'll see. Yeah, so if you have read any of the books that I have and you want to share your thoughts down below in the comments, please do. If you like this video, please press the like button. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. And there are some links in the description box for you to check out concerning World Matters. And that is pretty much it. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!